Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Hope you're having a good day. So, humility is our topic for today. We're going to talk about humility, being humble, what it means, how it affects us. Is it beneficial? So yeah, I think with this one, the further I get on the spiritual path, uh, the more profound this is, and the more meaning it takes, and the more important it seems to be, which I think is a natural progression. I think we're most of us are starting with low self-esteem from our conditioned upbringing in a dysfunctional society, not thinking we're good enough, being raised in a school system that tries to make everybody the same. And if you're bad at something, they want you to do it more instead of less, which kind of goes against the idea of individuality. So, and there's lots of other reasons. I just think that most of us have some sort of insecurity from the system that we grow up in. So most often we overcorrect. So what if we're going to have low self-esteem, how do we try to correct that? And, and also when I say, how do we try to correct that? I'm talking about right now, I'm talking about from an unconscious perspective, because that's how most of us are running around. So, so from an unconscious perspective, if you don't feel good enough, what do you want to feel? You want to feel better than. It's the overcorrection, So there's an aspect of that. We just tried. Oh, I think that this is it kind of seems like with the spiritual journey that when we talk about being treated with love and respect and fairness, which is, I believe, things that we all want, people who don't feel they've been treated with respect and fairness and equality, that you start hearing, oh, I deserve to be treated like a king, I deserve to be treated like a queen. No, you don't. No, I've never really bought into that. I think it was because when I was getting sober, I heard things like, you're just another bozo on the bus. And I heard that terminal uniqueness is a major problem. And I understood what they were saying in that as I was initially getting sober. I had blown open so much that when I heard these things, I could conceptually understand what they meant. So I hung on to them. And that goes for a lot of things I heard in that first year or two. So I understood that the terminal uniqueness could be a main problem. As soon as I start thinking that I'm different from everybody else, or my problems are worse than everybody else's, that can be terminal. That can kill me. That can take me back out to drinking until I die. So, which could be very quick when you're drinking. obsessively. So I understood those concepts, and I think that that's why, when people are running around saying, "Oh, I'm a king, I'm a queen, I deserve to be treated like a king or a queen," I'm just like, like, I don't think that everybody means it in a negative way. I've heard it said in certain ways and from certain people, uh, that I think the meaning isn't as bad as I'm kind of making it out to be right now. Like, I'm trying to show contrast between two things to make points. So like, I understand that some people, if they say they want to be treated like a king or a queen, um, a lot of times, if you really start talking to those people, they just want to be treated with equality and respect. That's really what they want. It's just they've latched on to this concept or this word of king or queen, for some reason. You know, I don't particularly use that. I don't really like that. But it doesn't mean that everybody that uses that is extremely dysfunctional or something. It doesn't mean that, because different words can have different meanings, right? To different people. Um, that being said, to be honest, I I I think the people that are using king and queen will eventually get out of using those terms. And even if you have a more grounded conceptual understanding of using the word king or queen, I think at some point you kind of have to let that go, because it's you can kind of tell yourself that, no, to me, a king or a queen just means I want to be treated equal. You can say that for a while, but at the end of the day, what is a king or a queen? Like, if you can take just about anybody on the planet and say, um, okay, what does being treated like a queen look like? Like, literally explain it to me. Like, and if they have a vision of a queen, any queen that's existed in humanity, or any king that's existed in humanity for the last 20,000 years, it's a particular concept. It's that they are at the top and everybody else is below them. Usually they have many servants. People look up to them. They get anything they want. It's a king or a queen mentality is not the mentality of equalness. It's the mentality of better than. Like, that's the general concept of it. And like I said, I understand that some people don't necessarily mean it that way per se. But like I said, I think as we get further on the spiritual path, all of us, including people who use those terms, I think that they're going to let those go. I think at some point you really have to embrace humility as a spiritual principle, and when you do, I don't think you're going to feel real comfortable using the king and queen terms. But but it can be a stepping stone. I actually touched on this in my last podcast about using things to get us from one point to another. Like, if we're going from low self-esteem to high self-love, okay, because that's healthy. So low self-esteem to high self-love, then it can be a pretty big gap. So sometimes we have to kind of overcorrect, eh, just to get ourselves to push ourselves in that direction. Then when we start getting closer, like, or if we even overcorrect, Also, we got to bring ourselves back down, and we have to fine tune at the end. And that's kind of how I see it. So I don't necessarily see that, people using king and queen as a way to refer to themselves is this horrible thing that they have to stop doing. I don't see it like that. I just see it that at some point you're going to get close enough to where you don't have to work on your self-esteem so much because you've done such a good job raising it. And then to fine tune it to a healthy place to where it needs to be, you really need to bring in humility. And when you bring in humility, then the words like king and queen that have obvious references to better than over the last 20,000 years, you kind of let go of those because of the stigma attached to them. And so so humility, let's, I don't know. Well, you guys know this is how it goes. I write a line of thought. And that's something that I see and hear a lot of in the spiritual communities, this king queen mentality. And I just don't resonate with it. No big deal. It's okay if other people do. I just don't. And this is why. It's because of the ego. And I understood this concept when I first woke up. I didn't understand every concept, but I understood this one. So I've never really been comfortable thinking of myself or referring to myself as better than other people. I've just never liked that. I've always had kind of a stigma against that. And I think it's because of one, I've had some references that this is a big part of my healing journey from past lives and definitely in this life. Like I just don't have that. Like there's this thing I've never had even as a child, and I've talked about it before. Like I just don't understand this idea of respecting people because of their job or their education level or their age or their status. I just don't understand why people think that people deserve respect for any of those things. I just don't. I don't respect anybody for any of those things. I respect human beings for being human beings, and I'm a human being. So that means we're equal. I'm equal to everybody. I'm equal to the Pope. I'm equal to the president. I'm equal to my boss. I am equal to my parents. I am equal to a Harvard educated person. I am equal to a multi-billionaire. I am equal to everybody on the planet. And that's just like foundational to me. It's not debatable. It's not, yeah, but it's not. So I believe that you have to give away what you want to receive. So it's not like I'm going to disrespect all those people. Like now, maybe when I was younger, I might have. Okay. So, but now that I have my feet on the ground, um, I'm not going to run around disrespecting people in those positions or any other position, right? Like I have to give away what I want to receive. So I'll automatically give respect to the Pope. I'll give respect to the president. I think. um, I'll give respect to I'll give respect to anybody just because they're a human being. I'll treat them with respect. But the moment they don't reciprocate that, then we have a problem. Because I'll give it to you, but I'm going to get it back. And if you think you're better than me because of any reason whatsoever, I don't care what the reason is, then we're not going to get along well. I just don't put up with it. I don't like being talked down to. I don't like being disrespected, and I'm not going to have it. And I don't need anything from them. Like whatever, like a lot of times I've found that people think I'm supposed to respect them and they don't have to respect me, because it's not only because they're better than me, but it's also the fact that they think they're better than me. Therefore, they can benefit my life somehow that wouldn't be possible if it weren't for them. Like they could give me knowledge that I won't be able to get unless I just kiss their ass, or they'll be able to give me money that I won't be able to get, or they'll be able to give me status that I wouldn't be able to get if it weren't for them, or something like that. And like I've run across this a lot actually with the land project that I'm doing. There's a lot of, like, this is my first land project, so I don't know what I'm talking about. And like, I try to make it clear to other people that I'm talking about that I respect their knowledge, because most people that I'm talking to about this land project know way more about business and land projects than I do, right? So I can learn from them and I can take in their perspectives, and that's valuable and helpful. So I see the value in that, the helpfulness of that. But some of them will dismiss what I'm saying just because they know that I haven't done this before. And I can tell the difference. I know, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, where was the hole in what I just said? I just said something completely logical. So could you tell me where I'm off? Well, no, you're just off. Oh, okay. So you're just not listening to me. You think that you know everything and I don't know anything. And you just want to do things your way because you've done this before. And you're not interested in having an equal conversation. I can tell because you can't tell me what was wrong with what I just said, because there was nothing wrong with what I just said. You just don't want to hear it because it came out of my mouth and I haven't done this before. Like, those are the people that I can't work with, because it's like they're not taking me seriously. They're not looking at me as an equal, or capable of being equal. Like, of course they have much more knowledge, but that doesn't mean that things that come out of my mouth are stupid. Like, because I'm very logical and I do have a business mind and I can understand things that work and things that don't work. So if somebody's just dismissing me and my ideas because they've done this before, instead of because, well, it won't work because of this. That's why when somebody says, well, no, that's not going to work, I ask them, okay, why? I want to learn. You have the information. I would like to learn from you. So tell me why. Well, it's not going to work because of this. Oh, okay, great point. Thank you very much. Like, that's extremely helpful. I love that stuff. But if somebody just says, well, it's not going to work, well, I say, why? Well, because it's just not. It's like, well, why? Well, you've just never done this before. Well, that has nothing to do with what I just said. That's a general sweeping argument that you just are looking at me like I'm a moron, and nothing that comes out of my mouth has any value. You haven't actually listened to the words that came out of my mouth, because if you did and something was off, you'd be able to point at it and go, that's what's off. Right? And plus you can read energy too. And there's variances of this too. It's like everything else, it's black and white. So just because somebody does that a little bit doesn't mean that I'm never going to work with them or I'm never going to have a conversation with them. Like, because with a lot of people, especially if they're not fully conscious, which of course none of us or most of us aren't, right? And we're very habitual beings, and we tend to, like, if we're very confident in what we're doing and habitual about it, and we know somebody else hasn't done it that much, there's just this unconscious thing that we know what we're talking about and they kind of don't so much. So it's just, but that's normal and it's completely manageable. So, like, with most people, if you just keep showing them respect and having intelligent conversations with them, you can kind of work through that unconsciousness aspect and get onto the even ground that we all need to be. And then things can go very well. It's kind of like, for lack of a better term, it's kind of like earning their respect, admitting that they know more than you and that you can learn from them. Usually that opens their ears because they like that dynamic because they do know more than you. Right? So you need to be humble enough to say, like, okay, I know that you know more than I do, and I want to learn from you. And then usually they're like, then all of a sudden they say something and you go, oh, okay, you mean this, and this is a good example of that, and blah, blah, blah. And they go, yes. And then they can see that you're getting it. They can see that you're smart enough to get it. You're on, like, intellectually, you're on the same wavelength as them, and you can pick up on this stuff and understand it deeply in a fairly quick period of time. Then they start kind of seeing you as a little bit more of an equal. They're still the expert, and in reality, they are still the expert if you're still learning, right? Um, but they no longer look at you like you're useless and have nothing to add, and they know everything. That gap starts closing, and they start going, well, of course, yeah, I've done this, so I'm the expert. But this person has the capability of becoming good at this because they can understand it well. Like, and it shortens that gap, and then you can have a good working relationship. If somebody just thinks you're a moron and you're never going to learn anything, and they're king shit, and you're just a peon, well, then you're never going to have a good working relationship with them because there's no respect there. And they don't have any humility. That's when their knowledge that they've gained in whatever area that they're in. And, I know I'm talking about the land project, but please, follow along with me. This can be any situation. This could be your boss at work. This could be a family member. This could be anybody that has done something more than you. Like, you can bridge that gap with them to the point where they actually are an asset because you can learn from them. If they're just putting you down, then it's just a waste of time. You're never going to be anything to them, so that you can you can walk away from that. But if you can bridge that gap, then yes, you can learn, and maybe things that took them, this is why mentoring is so important. It's what cracks me up. It's like people that are in like in business, especially, and in other areas, they're like, oh, well, I've been doing this 40 years, so you have to do it for 40 years. Otherwise, you have to just defer to me. Like, what? So nobody's ever learned anything from anybody? So, like, when somebody was first trying to figure out how to build a house out of bricks, they didn't fail like for 10 years until they finally found a system that actually worked, and then perfected it for another 10 years, and then brought in an assistant and taught them how to do it the right way. And what took them 20 years, they taught somebody else to do in 3 months or 6 months or a year. Like, that's never happened. Everything has happened that way. I think people forget that when they don't have the humility. When they think they're better than, then they're like, oh, well, no, I literally I literally heard that one time from somebody. Like, I was working with this gentleman who was a new CEO of this big company that did global projects for the benefit of people, and he had been doing it for 40 years. And I started talking to him, and I was like, okay, I'd like to do, you obviously have learned a lot over your lifetime. And, I was trying to have a conversation with him, and he just kept nipping it in the bud. And then finally I was just like, well, like, how do you suggest that I learn how to do this? And he's basically said, you either do exactly what I do, that's been proven to work, and don't ask any questions, and uh, on the lead, you have to do whatever I say blindly, or you go work for 40 years. And I was like, okay, conversation's over. He's so high on himself. He thinks so much of himself that he forgot that he could just actually sum up probably 10 years of his experience in a couple conversations. And he didn't want to be questioned. It threatened him. It threatened his self identity. So I didn't know that I was going to go off on all this stuff, but what I'm what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave the podcast as is, because I think that this is real life stuff. In humility, if I was to do it over again, I think I would lead. Like, my intention was to lead with more of a definition of humility and what it means, and stuff like that, and then expand into bigger things. And that's usually what I do. This time I kind of did it backwards. Whatever. Either I'm not perfect and you guys will live, or it was meant to be this way. And one of the things that I do well is I don't second guess myself very often. This is the way it went, man. Like, and maybe there's a reason. I don't know. I'm not God. Maybe, maybe people are going to message me and go, oh my God, I like that podcast better, Glenn, because you dove right into the real life stuff first. Or maybe you won't. Whatever. It is what it is. But I am going to, in my mind, I perceive it as kind of going back to square one and starting over with a more simplistic example or definition. So when humility, like it stems from the root word humus or humus, or I don't know how to pronounce it, but it means earth, ground, meaning humility keeps us grounded and in touch with reality rather than floating away in ego. And ego is a big part, because ego and humility are basically opposites. Okay. And the reason I say that is because ego craves separation, it craves that terminal uniqueness. That's why it's so dangerous, because you're off in your ego when you're like that. So the ego is constantly trying to create separation between you and everyone else. You want to differentiate, because it strengthens your sense of who you are egoically. And that's what the ego wants to be really sure on who you think you are. And the more clear it can get on that, the stronger it feels that it's right. And the stronger it feels that it's right, the stronger your ego is. So this is why it craves separation. And oftentimes, like, there are many people who are living lives that, let's just say they would have a hard time from a external level. Like, what I mean by that is, like, they don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of things. Perhaps they're not in a relationship. There's a lot of people out there that, from society's labels of making it or being successful, they're not really experiencing that in life. I mean, quite honestly, the majority of people on the planet aren't considered highly successful. If everybody was successful, then success would mean something different, right? Usually success means, making it from a societal sense, not from a spiritual sense. It means making a ton of money and having a bunch of things, and maybe a high status, job title or, whatever. So, from that perspective, most people would have a hard time saying I'm better than everybody else because, they're caught up measuring themselves against society's standards. So, but the ego is just wants separation. It doesn't care how it gets it. So, a lot of times people, the average person is using their ego to say how victimized they are. Oh, must be nice being successful. Not me. I mean, my parents had nothing growing up, and they'll give you all their reasons why. Oh, my boss fired me for nothing. Or, I've tried to climb the ladder, but they just keep holding me down. Or, nothing is their fault. It's being done to them. And if you understand how much it's done to them, then you'll feel sorry for them. And that's how they can kind of rob your energy, through sympathy. You're pouring oh, you poor thing. Oh no. And they're like, oh yes, thank you. Feed that energy. Yes, it's not my fault. Oh, life was unfair to me. Oh yes. Oh, now I'm energetically filled up because this person is throwing sympathy at me. Oh yeah, that feels better. See, I am unique in my own way. I've had a very hard life. So, that was my cry when I drank. It's most drug addicts and alcoholics cry. If you had my problems, you'd drink too. You know. So, and most people, it's just more obvious with drug addicts and alcoholics. So, that's ego. It's just looking for separation. I'm more pitiful than you are, so therefore you should feel sorry for me. Oh, separation increases. Good. All right. Now things really aren't fair for me. They might not be fair for some people, but if you knew my story, you'd really understand life's really unfair to me. Might be kind of unfair to you, but it's much more unfair for me. Terminal uniqueness, separation, ego. Like people think ego is just, oh, I'm better than you. No, actually, of course, that is ego, but there's more people that are addicted to the ego, and the ego is controlling them, and they are egotistical in a victim way than there are, I'm better than you. There's way more people. And it's generally really not socially acceptable to be running around saying I'm better than you. It's just like, I mean, think about it, Sometimes, rich celebrities or something can get away with it for a while, but even them, they usually fall off the pedestal they put themselves on. And athletes and all that stuff. But oh, I'm the man, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best. Like, yeah, you're gonna fall off that at some point. But most people are egoic from a I'm not good enough, or I'm a victim of life standpoint, or I'm a victim of something else. That's how they increase separation. And then they're sure that that's who and what they are. That's their identity. Right. So, you know, and that's kind of an important distinction. It's not humility is not thinking you're less than. It's not weakness. It's knowing that you are equal to, you're the same. It's an emanation of the concept of oneness, that we are all one. If we are all one, then we are all the same. We're all functioning from the same consciousness. If there's one consciousness in the universe, the mind of God, and we all have access to it, and we're all capable of functioning from it once we connect to it, and we are all equal. We're all the same. There's nobody that's more important or better or more in any way, shape, or form than anybody else at all. So this is why we need to start, we need to let go of anything other than humility as we get further and further on our spiritual path. We need to be grounded in who we are. And like I looked, there was actually some decent stuff that I found when I looked for a few notes. Like in one of the things it said, spiritual humility is unselved, liberated from the constant need to protect, assert, or showcase the self. Liberated from the constant need to protect. So you don't have to protect yourself from other people when you're humble, because they're not capable of attacking you. See, that's humility is a double-sided coin. Like we can, depending on how you come at it, you can see it in different ways, because it's just such a beautiful spiritual concept. It's a spiritual truth. So like we look at it and we go, okay, well, if I'm humble, that means that I don't think that I'm better than other people. Yes, it does. But it also means that other people aren't better than you. It's both sides. It's not one. And I think that we look at that, like, people who think they're better than me. I mean, I already explained that I don't believe that. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. It's like somebody saying, like, Glenn, you're actually a dog. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm human, like, whatever. And I'm not going to take it too seriously, and I'm not going to defend myself from them because I know that it's a load of crap. They're not better than me. So, but that's the door we usually come in, and that's what we so focus on that. And I think the other side is more important, because, like, if one side we have clarity on, like, if I go to you and say, okay, you know what, you really need to understand that these people that think that they're better than you, it's an egotistical thing, and you don't have to take them seriously. Most people are going to understand that. If you have some level of self-love, self-esteem, and somebody explain that, like, they just think they're better than you, don't worry about it. They're not. Let them think that. Oh, okay. Like, most people can understand that, in a lot of situations. It can get difficult in certain situations, but as a general rule, that's a concept. But like, coming at it from the other direction and going, like, they think they're better than you, and they're not, but you're just as good as everybody else. And nobody can hurt you, because you're good. You don't have to protect yourself. You don't have to be defensive all the time. Have you ever have you ever seen somebody deeply spiritual, like Eckhart Tolle or Dalai Lama or something? Like, have you ever seen them protect themselves egoically? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure they have in their lifetime. I'm not saying once or twice, but as a general rule, they don't protect themselves, because they know that nobody can hurt them. Like, so they don't. If nobody can hurt you, then you don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to protect. This is one of the things that, like, when people, some of my clients or other people, they'll be like, oh, I got into an argument with somebody about, Jesus or spirituality or God. This person said spirituality was a load of BS, or there is no God, or Jesus was a meathead, or what, something. So I get into an argument with I mean, I'm not going to allow them just to say that. That's it's like blasphemy. It's like, God, spirituality, Jesus doesn't need your defense. They don't need you to protect them. They're good. So you getting into an argument with somebody over something like that, it's a waste of your time. Jesus isn't up there sitting there going, yeah, damn right, you tell him, because like, my God, he said something negative about me and that really hurt my feelings. That hurt my ego. And I need you to defend me. No, Jesus is up there going like, it's not true. It's okay. They're just lost. Forgive them. They know not what they do. Right. So yeah, the more humility we have, the less we need to protect ourselves from others, the less we need to assert ourselves into other people's business and other people's worlds, and assert our way of doing things, right? That's a sense of control. We can let go of control. We don't need to assert ourselves in other situations when we have humility. We can allow people to live their lives the way that they're living their lives, because we understand that, like, we've been there too. When I first woke up, the first thing that I got, like, spiritually, a spiritual concept that came to me was right when I woke up. Like, my sponsor in AA said, the one thing I ask is, if I take you through the steps, that you take others through the steps. So as soon as I went through and blew open, he said, okay, now it's your responsibility to help others. And I went, okay. And I just did what I was told back then. I didn't even trust my thinking yet, Oh, help. Okay. So, like, when I blew open, people were recognizing it in me. They'd see me from across the room and I'd be like, what the heck happened to Glenn? Like, the light came back on in my eyes and my energy was different. So, like, people started coming to me for help. So I started trying to help them, and they're like, what happened? What did you do? How did this occur? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm talking to them and I'm trying to explain it to the best of my ability. And then next thing you know, they'd be out drinking, or I'd be at their funeral. And like, very quickly, I was like, what is the problem here? And I remember getting frustrated, and I sat down on my bed and I laid back, and I was experiencing this frustration. And I'm like, what the hell, man? I told them what to do. Just let go and let God, man. Just open and then surrender. And then all of a sudden everything is like, and I told them specifically what to do, and they're not doing it. And now they're all messed up. Like, they said they wanted it, but they're not implementing it. What the heck is the problem? And then all of a sudden, I started looking for the answer. And what I heard was, well, Glenn, like 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, you weren't like you are now. You hadn't experienced this shift of consciousness. And people told you things that could help you. But for some reason, you weren't able to implement them. Why? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe it wasn't time. Maybe I wasn't capable of understanding. I don't know. And they're like, right. The voice said, right. And they don't know. They're just where you were before. If it was just as simple as just telling somebody something once and then they just did it, like, we probably wouldn't have any drug, addicts or alcoholics on the planet. Like, so it's like, oh yeah. It's like, so, it brought me back to humility. And I was like, oh yeah, like, I'm not better than them because I'm awake now, or I understand things now. I was exactly where they were 3 months ago, 6 months ago. And I took it one step further, and it's like, well, would it have been appropriate for somebody to think that I was a moron and think less of me and talk down to me because I wasn't capable of hearing what they were trying to tell me? It's like, well, no, that wouldn't have served any purpose. That wouldn't have helped me. It just would have made me feel more like crap about myself, and that there's even more things wrong with me than I already thought was wrong with me. So it wouldn't have benefited me in any way. It's like, okay, well then don't do it to them. Have some compassion. They're just where you were a few months ago. It's like, oh, okay. And that's humility. It's understanding that we're all the same and like we've all been in difficult spots. This is why I meet my clients where they are. It's like when some of my sponsees would have awakenings or get sober, or whatever, things would click. And same with clients. Like sometimes afterwards they would come up to me and they'd be like, how could you stand talking to me? Like I was challenging everything that you said. I was asking the stupidest questions. I had my head up my ass. I couldn't understand half of these simple things that you were trying to say to me. Wasn't I driving you crazy? And like people were saying this, and I'd be like, no, like I didn't perceive it like that at all. And so, of course I dive into it, be like, why? Why didn't I feel that way? It's like, well, because I just met them where they were. Like if when you talk to somebody, you have to talk to them where they are. Otherwise, what's the point? Like you're going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to say some really spiritually enlightened stuff. And if you don't get it, get the hell away from me. Like, oh yeah, that should help a lot of people. No, explain it. You try to meet them where they are. If they don't understand if you're talking to them about a concept that's up here and they're down here and they just don't get it, you don't just walk away. You come down here and explain it, at a simpler level. Maybe something that resonates with them in their particular life. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, now I get it. Yeah, okay. Then you can take a step up and then take another step up, then take another step up. And then they finally get up here with you and they're like, oh, okay, now I get all of it. Sometimes you got to walk them. Most times you do. That's how it's done. That's how I work. That's how I do my job. Meet somebody where they are and then walk them to where they're going. Like that's it. Right. So you can't think, you can't be busy judging when you're like that. Oh, is this person less than? Is this person? No, there's nobody that's less than. It's not, the problem isn't that they can't understand or that they're less than or they're not capable. Everybody's capable. Everybody can understand. Everybody can awaken. Everybody has the Buddha within. Everybody has the Christ consciousness within. Everybody. It's just a matter of finding a way to say things and give them examples to lead them to where they come to their own conclusion themselves. But you got to meet them where they are to do that. And if you know that you're not better than anybody, it's just not, of course you're going to do it that way. You think you're better than other people, then you're not going to be very, very good at helping others. If you think you're better than other people, you're not going to be good at helping others. Because you think you're capable of things that they're not capable of. And that's just not true. From a spiritual perspective, of course, like there are certain capabilities that some people have that other people don't have. But it doesn't mean that you're better than. Like, Michael Jordan had much more physical basketball capabilities than I did. I don't care how long I played. I was never going to be Michael Jordan. Not as good as him on the basketball court. So but that doesn't make him a better human being than me. It just means that he was better at a particular thing. And same with intelligence levels, athletic abilities, predispositions for some things. We're all individuals. We're all unique. So our expressions are supposed to be different. We're not all supposed to be the same intelligence level. We don't need to be. We don't need to be the same athletic ability. We don't need, we're supposed to be different and unique and doing our own thing. But from a spiritual perspective, it's all the same. This is one thing that, like, people put the life coaching thing kind of up on a pedestal, I think, too much, because when people wake up spiritually, there's something in us that knows that that we are one with others, and that we want to be of service and love one another and help one another. It's just this natural thing that opens up in our hearts, so we want to help one another. So then they look at a life coach or a spiritual advisor, and they're like, oh my God, their life must be perfect because they get to help people for a living. So they must walk around just fulfilled all the time. And that's not what it is. I mean, like, my my son was a plumber. That was his first career training, I guess we'll say. He's not doing it now, but he started off plumbing. So when he's a plumber, right? And like most people with this concept, if they don't think deeply enough, that they're like, oh, life coaching. Oh, the life coach helps people. That's very, very important and fulfilling. And, but a plumber, they fix toilets. I mean, come on. And I'm looking at it like I grew. The reason he became a plumber was because his godfather has a plumbing company. And when I moved to Florida, I hung out with him and all kinds of other plumbers. I never looked at them as less than. And when I look at it, it's like, okay, well, like, if it's Christmas Eve and you have your entire family over your house, and all of a sudden the plumbing gets backed up and nobody can go to the bathroom, who's more important in that situation? A life coach or a plumber? I'm going to call a plumber. Now, don't get me wrong. You might be able to call a life coach too, just to handle the situation well, so you don't lose your mind. But the point stands. Plumber's kind of more important than that. So, like, when every job is like that. Like, people minimize what they do. If you're bringing food to somebody, if you're a waiter or a waitress, that counts. Like, you're serving people, you're doing something for people. And what's interesting, like, in any area, you can see this. Like, if you start looking, this is a good kind of like game to do in real life. Look for people at any job: waitress, somebody that picks up the trash, a plumber, somebody that digs ditches, a teacher, a business professional, any job in the world. Look at the people who are really good at it and really enjoy it. Those people are the ones that are embracing it instead of comparing it to other things. And they're amazing at it. You ever have that waitress or waiter that just makes your entire day better, makes your entire week or month better, just because of the way that they were acting and interacting with you when you were there? Like, anybody can impact anybody else in a positive way. So I think I'm going to kind of wrap up with the last aspect that I want to touch on was what humility does. When we embrace humility, what it does is it has us thinking of ourselves less. Okay, there's a big, it was referred to in something that I just read. It said unselved, not focused on self. Major problem. Major problem in society, especially now. And the reason is because of the independence. We don't have a lot of sense of community anymore. And we're separate. Like, there's never been a time in human history that you didn't know your neighbors until recently, until the last 50 years, maybe 100 the most. Prior to that, you knew your neighbors. You talked to them on a daily basis. You interacted, your lives interacted together. Maybe not all of them, but a majority. They were part of your life. You were part of theirs. It's not like that anymore. We're very independent. We don't like asking for help. We should be able to do it ourselves. We have no sense of community. And because of this, it increases the separation, right? So then we're focused on ourselves, and that is egoic. So the more we're focused on ourselves, the more our world shrinks, the worse our perspective is. You notice whenever you have a problem, like you get too close to it, it consumes all your focus and it's all you can see. And then all of a sudden you take a step back and you gain perspective and you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I could do this. It's better. You can't see the solution when you're completely focused on the problem because you're too close to it, right? This is what happens when we're all focused on, oh, what, you know, well, the gas price wasn't the exact gas price that I wanted to pay. It was 14 cents more. Oh, that's not good for my life. Oh, well, I was going to make chicken and they didn't have the right chicken at the grocery store. That's not good for my life. Like, we're nickel and diming ourselves to death because we're all we see. Or we're seeing other people complain about problems going on in the world that don't actually affect us or that we have no control over. You know, that's how most people are trying to bridge that gap right now. They're like, oh, well, I care about humanity, so I'm going to get really upset about this thing that I saw on the news that I have no control over and I have no impact on, but it makes me feel like a good person because I'm acting like I care. Okay, like why don't, or you could just go invite your neighbor over for dinner. That would enhance the sense of community in your neighborhood and love around you and the people in your life more than bitching on social media about some world problem that you have no control over. We have to stop focusing on ourselves and start focusing on other people. As soon as somebody says something we don't like, oh, they're going to drain my energy and I need to cut them out of my life because I don't handle toxic. I cut toxic out of my life like a cancer. Yeah, okay. Well, you're going to be all alone then. You're building your own prison by cutting everybody else out of your life that doesn't think the way that you do. You know, we think we're right. Our way of looking at things is right. That's ego. And everybody that doesn't think like this is bad or shouldn't be in my life. Oh, okay. We got to get rid of them. Okay. All right. Well, you know, now you're creating your own little vacuum of thinking. You can't hear anything that doesn't, you know, I love it on social media when people are like, okay, well, I'm going to state these things, and anybody who disagrees with what I say is obviously, it's a mirror for them. And it just means they're triggered. And what I'm saying is so true that it's triggering them and they need to go inside and heal that. Those are for the people who disagree with me. And for the people who agree with me, well, you're obviously spiritually enlightened and wonderful people. So, and I'll use the people that agree with me to prove that some people agree with me and they're highly enlightened, and you people that disagree with me are just triggered and need to do more work on themselves. That's a great way to make yourself never wrong. And that's not humility. You need to be able to understand different concepts and see things in different ways and give other people permission to disagree with you and not think that there's something wrong with them if they do. But they're spiritual, right? Yeah. All right. Well, I ran out of time, so I'm going to cut it here. Thanks for listening. Hopefully this helps. I think it was kind of all over the place, but yeah, a lot of times when I think that, people are like, oh no, Glenn, I enjoyed it. All right. I hope you enjoyed it. All right. Thanks for listening, people. Peace.